those drinks. It's time for Sports Around the Bar. Hey guys, welcome into Sports Around the Bar, your weekly sports talk show. As always, I am Jake, your bartender, and I'm joined on center stool by a guy who's making it hard to keep it professional, Drew. And guys, we have got a lot to talk about today. I'm sure my title went on for about 4 hours. We got a lot of football news, which is good for the offseason, Drew. Normally this time of year, we're sitting around like, well, I hear they're going to play in like September. So it's nice to have something to talk about. I'm excited about that. We're also going to be talking some NBA with Tyreek Evans on his way out. If you haven't heard, we'll talk about him and what he's done. I'm sure they give him time to pack his bags and stuff. And then we'll move on and talk about the rest of the playoffs and guys who are actually going to be playing in the NBA for the next few years. We'll talk about them a little bit too. The NHL, we'll get around to that. We got a full board today, Drew.
Full bird. Shannon, what's going on, man? Glad you could join us, guys. It's an exciting time. The NBA, is coming to an end. NHL is coming to an end. They got some great series, great games are going against each other. I mean, I'm not trying to spoil anything, but did you watch that Bucks and Raptors game? Wow, what a great game.
I thought Toronto had it. I did. I thought Toronto was going to manage to pull it off, man. They couldn't quite get it done. But we'll talk about that later. Unless you want to leave. Do you want to lead with it? We can lead. We don't lead with basketball very often, Drew. Are we changing things up?
Let's do it. Let's
you hijacked the show. We might as well. Let's talk Toronto.
How do I hijack it when I own it?
Let's talk Toronto first, because Milwaukee, I mean, it was just crazy the way they were playing. Brook Lopez was absolutely letting more threes rip. I think they said he scored more threes in that game than like the first 4 years of his entire NBA career.
Yes.
So absolutely, whether you want to call it adrenaline, whether you want to call it just in the moment where the guy was hot and feeling it, they needed him to step up, and he 100% did. More than that, though, I mean, you look at the Bucks, you look at the way Toronto's playing right now. This actually looks like the series that deserves to be in the Eastern Conference Finals. You look at the other side, not quite so much.
Almost a series that looked like should be the the championship game. I mean, it's exciting. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Brook Lopez has literally changed his game. He literally has trying to develop himself into today's NFL. God, I'm going to do that forever. Today's NBA. I mean, you're talking about a guy that you reminded me, because I totally forgot about that. Brooklyn Nets has tried to put a team around and make him the centerpiece of of a team in the NBA. Let's all not forget, guys, this NBA today is not about big men anymore. It's all about pure shooters. It's all about quick offense, kind of pass and shoot kind of scenario, where that's where you see Klay Thompson, and I don't want to put Curry and KD there, but if you can put up a three and shoot, that's what the NBA is. And Brook Lopez, as much as it was probably his best game ever in the finals, or any kind of, like, not finals, but any kind of playoff scenario, it's great to see a big man like that develop and change his game, especially late into his career.
Oh, I know. You don't see it very often. Usually guys that don't shoot don't stick around forever, but the guys who can kind of develop that shot manage to stay around in the NBA for a lot longer. Let's talk about the series here, Drew. Obviously, Toronto now is down by 1, and if you look at it, how big of a loss is that? I mean, I think most of pretty much the entire sports world wanted to give that first game to the Bucks, probably wanted to give the entire series to the Bucks right away. Doesn't that encouraging performance sit there and show any kind of, path for Toronto to win this series, or do you see the Milwaukee Bucks taking this all the way?
To be honest, I feel like it's a dagger in the heart, because they all rights, they deserve to win that game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they dominated it. They literally dominated until what? Maybe, I want to say maybe 5 minutes in, 6 minutes into left in the fourth quarter. I mean, it was over. We looked at it and go, what?
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, the Bucks aren't even in this.
No. And to their credit, they rallied when they needed to rally. I mean, honestly, it doesn't matter how you start, it matters how you finish.
Right.
And they came alive towards the fourth quarter. Towards the end of that game, they basically took it over and managed to, kind of undo all the good things that Toronto was doing to get this win. When I look at this and the way they've played, I'm still going to say Bucks. I'm still going to say Bucks in 6. I think that's what I said to begin with. But now all of a sudden, this might be the series to watch as opposed to Golden State and Portland. I know everyone was talking about Portland beforehand, like, okay, if they get off to an early lead or if they get off to any of this, maybe they stand a chance because Durant is out. Cousins probably won't be back. And, we've heard Durant's going to be out for an extended period of time. He probably won't play through the first 4 games at least now. When you look at it, Drew, again, it doesn't seem like Golden State's missed a beat.
No.
They're still just as dominant, just as lethal. And I know everyone's going to say, well, Portland kind of gave them the same run for their money that Toronto wound up giving the Bucks, but that's just not true, man. It felt to me like, yeah, they started off strong, but Golden State pretty much had this all the way through. As soon as they needed to, they turned it on. They've never had that desperation, or there's never been any kind of look about them that you're like, oh, we could lose this. There's none of that.
No, and when it kind of quiets all the talk also about Stephen Curry being a superstar. It talks about it because there's no doubt about it. That guy is taking a back seat to Kevin Durant. Has literally said, "Hey, go ahead and score." I don't think anyone ever said Stephen Curry isn't the leader, but as far as the offense flow through somebody, it was Kevin Durant. There's no doubt about it. The offense flew through Kevin Durant. That was what everything was based on. It's like put it in KD's hands
Exactly.
and watch what he can do. And when he's down, everyone's like, "Oh no, can Stephen Curry step up?" Well, let's all not forget Curry won a championship without KD there.
Exactly, and they probably should have beat the Cavs and LeBron when they were up 3-1, right? I get it. They blew it, and they're like, we're getting KD afterward, and you would too. If you're the GM, you're like, yeah, let's just bring him in. Why not? But, I mean, you're right. They absolutely have won without him. They were very close to winning 2 straight. This is still a great team. He is a superstar, even though we don't talk about him as much as some of these other guys. And I think the most telling thing about Steph Curry that we don't really see with many of these other NBA superstars is he's okay giving up some of the credit. He's okay passing the ball to Klay Thompson. He's okay letting the offense run through Durant. He's just out there to win championships. He's not the guy that makes noise. I mean, everyone sits there and says, why doesn't Harden lead Houston? And it's always, well, he can't play with other guys. You can't bring other guys in because he needs to be the alpha and all this other crap that everyone keeps talking about. It's like, no, you're a team player. The good players ultimately wind up saying, I'm good, but you can be good and be on my team. It's like us, Drew. We're both good, but we sit there and say you can be on the show too.
We're also saying it's great for the NBA that a little guy is dominating the NBA.
So are you the Steph or are you the Durant of the show?
No, I'm like the guy that sits on the bench.
DeMarcus Cousins. Hurt a lot, but pretty effective when you're in. Effective when you're in.
No, to be honest with you, I mean, I think it's great in the NBA for a guy like Stephen Curry, someone who's under 6'6", dominating in the NBA. I think it's really great for a lot of those small men, or it's like, it kind of brings back the Allen Iverson, kind of brings back the Spud Webb, the really tiny guys, the Steve Nash, the kind of guys that don't get a lot of the highlight because they're not the big dominating guys in the middle. I mean, you can sit there and say Michael Jordan, but he's just on another tier all by himself.
Right.
That's not fair to compare those two. Like I'll say it again, it's absolutely great to see Stephen Curry do what he has been kind of quietly not doing because KD is there, and it's exciting.
Absolutely. CJ says Zion to the Pelicans. We did a whole episode on that and what the Pelicans should do now and everything else. But you're right. It's a game changer, and it came miraculously at the time when they needed something to help turn this franchise back in the right direction. So I'm sure as a New Orleans fan, or if you're a New Orleans fan, you should be 100% excited about this, because whether you take Zion and AD moves on and you trade him for some more pieces, you're going to be able to rebuild this team much faster than a lot of other teteams in the NBA. You don't have to worry about any more of this trust the process kind of crap. It seems like you had the perfect scenario just fall into your lap. Not bad for 6%.
And I don't mean to get off subject, but one question I didn't ask you, because we talk about Zion going to the Pelicans and saving that organization. What kind of pull does free agency look, because you have Zion there? Because let's not forget, AD's been there since, 2012? He's been down there dominating in New Orleans.
They got Boogie Cousins. Before you say they didn't get anyone,
but I didn't say that. But it didn't work out.
Exactly.
It didn't work out.
It did. You're right. You're right in that. I think it has a lot of pull. I think all of a sudden you're going to be one of the media darlings because this guy attracts so many eyes. You're going to get a lot of primetime games. You're going to be the focus of the NBA. There's going to be a lot of talk about you. So if I'm Klay Thompson, or I'm one of these other guys that might be leaving my team, like Kyrie Irving, I should absolutely consider New Orleans. I think single-handedly he's going to bring attention back to the city. And that's okay, CJ. I mean, everybody misses episodes now and then. We're not worried about it. It is there if you want to go watch it. Again, just go click on our video tab. You can always go down there because we went way in depth on this. But
yeah,
to make a long story short, he asked, does AD stay? I think he should. And what I would do is, if I'm Anthony Davis, I would go to the GM right now and I would sit there and say, you bring in one more superstar, and I get it. You might have to lose a couple guys like Solomon Hill and Etwan Moore. If you probably ditch those contracts, you'd probably bring in another star. I'd sit there and say, you bring in one more star to play with me and Drew Holiday here, and Zion is the first pick, I'll stick around. Because if they bring a Klay Thompson in to play the 2 and be the catch-and-shoot guy, this team is a playoff team that can challenge the Warriors, or what will be left of the Warriors, even if they keep KD.
I'm kind of just like, well, how many bridges did he burn? Is he no longer going to be able to get along with the front office? Is he no longer going to be able to get along with the GM or the head coach? Because if you don't have that kind of connection, I mean, maybe it is worth trading him off. Maybe it's worth looking at the Knicks or looking at the Lakers and looking at like the 3rd or 4th pick in this draft and saying, let's start our organization over with 2 young stars rising in the NBA. but at the same time, I think it's best for the organization to keep AD.
And CJ also says with a max deal, he'd stay if he was AD, but he's already got the max deal, and he wants to win. So I say credit to him. I like guys that want to win championships. I like guys that sit there and say, I value winning more than I do just getting paid somewhere, because you could probably make more money staying with the Pelicans with the way the bird rules work, or the bird laws, whatever you want to call them. The fact of the matter is the guy said, I will take less money to win a championship. I like that, but now he doesn't have to make that choice. I think with Zion going there, like I said, you bring in a Klay Thompson, and if I'm AD, I'm the guy recruiting him. You can't let the GM do it. I'd go to him and be like, look, man, the only thing this team is missing is that outside shooter who can catch and shoot like you. Come be a star with us. Come win championships and prove it's not just Golden State. That would be my pitch. If I'm Anthony Davis, short of that, if you don't get a star, I probably would say, okay, look, we tried. Now it's time to move on.
CJ, I hope that helped you. If not, you can go back and watch our other show, the last episode. But let's get back to this series. So now that Portland Trailblazers, which is a lot of people's, as NBA fans, favorites to win this series because no one's wanting to see the Warriors again in the finals, now being down 0-2, do they even have a possible chance coming back to into the series?
No. I mean, they needed to strike early and they needed to strike quick. With KD, I know we're still saying he's going to be out for the first 4 games. I know there's a potential he's going to miss more games after that. The fact of the matter is they kind of blew it. You have to at least tie with the Warriors in the first series. You have to take them and take advantage while they're down. I really don't feel like they've done it, and I've seen all these infographics out there saying, McCollum and Lillard have scored less than Curry and Thompson. I mean, I like Damian Lillard. I like CJ McCollum, but who's sitting there saying they're as good as someone like Steph or Klay Thompson as a duo? You're comparing apples to oranges here. These guys are in another league. That's why Golden State's going to cruise to a 5-game series win, Drew.
Curry by himself outscored both of those guys.
Absolutely. I mean, the guy's been on fire, and everyone's sitting there saying, before, when KD got hurt, they're like, oh, the Warriors are in trouble. This guy doesn't score like he used to, is what I hear. He doesn't play good enough defense. Well, guess what? It just turns out that he's like, well, KD's scoring everything. We're running the offense through him. So he was willing to take a backseat, which we don't see out of superstars very often in the NBA. Usually it's all about me, and I can't get along with anyone. I think he is one of the most mature athletes and in the entire game of basketball. To be willing to sit there and say, I know I'm good, but you're allowed to be good too.
And he was one of the first steps of changing the NBA to what it is now.
Exactly. I mean, when he started ripping all those three-pointers from half court and everything, everyone's like, okay, now I need to do that. And maybe that's encouraged Damian Lillard. I mean, we saw him make one of those at the buzzer against the Thunder earlier this playoffs. So he's changed the NBA.
He absolutely has. Nate says they got dealt a good hand and they blew it. There's no doubt about it. If they were going to win this series, they needed to take a game in the first 2 games. And it's going to go back to what I said. They're going to win a game in Portland. I more than likely see that happening. But that's it. The series is over in 5 games.
I think so too. I'm kind of there with you where I think they steal one at home. Obviously they have to, or it's a sweep. I think they take one at home and then they probably lose in Golden State at 5. Look, by some miracle, they win Game 5 in Golden State. They come back to Portland down 3-2, or down 3-2. Do you think they could pull 2 games off, a 2-game heist, and maybe get back into this? I know I'm giving one to Golden State already in Portland, but there's no way Portland sweeps both of those at home, right?
No. If Stephen Curry keeps doing what he does and what he has done historically, I don't think so.
And Nate says they got dealt a good hand and they blew it.
I just want that.
Okay, well, I just want to bring Nate into the show. I'm sorry. I must have been off in space.
I brought Nate into the show.
Nate's right, though. They blew
Welcome
it, right?
again, Nate.
It's what we were saying. They need to strike early. They need to strike fast, and they didn't. And I think I said that already. So, yeah, I remember that now.
Well, let's go back to the other series. Let's sit there and let's talk about what the Raptors can do to turn this around. I mean, there's no doubt about it. We both agree that they should have won that first game in the series. And now they're coming back, I believe it's tonight, Milwaukee, and they got to do it again. They got to do it in front of that crowd, a city, a state that fully believes in this organization and what they can bring them an NBA championship. I mean, this is an exciting time for Milwaukee. It's been a long time.
And Toronto. I think the entire East is excited now because LeBron isn't there, right? We'd be talking about the Sixers if they were the same way.
Toronto's been in this spot before.
Right. And that is true. Now all of a sudden you got Giannis. Has not. Now all of a sudden you got Giannis playing like he's an elite superstar, and it took him 5 years to get here, but he has arrived. They're definitely the favorites for a reason. I think the team is better through and through on Milwaukee than it is out there. I mean, you got guys like Bledsoe and Middleton on Milwaukee. I think they have much more talent behind their superstar, whereas Toronto has Kawhi, and then maybe Kyle Lowry, maybe Siakam can play a little bit better. But I don't know. There's not really that guy in Toronto that I'm like, okay, if something happens to Kawhi, he can step up and they'll be fine. I really do feel like Milwaukee is much deeper in that aspect.
Yeah, Kyle Lowry has been, in my opinion, a disappointment. It was a guy that shouldn't have been quiet. He should have been just as loud or right next to Kawhi, making a lot of moves, and it seems like he's struggling a little bit to do it.
Right, absolutely. Justin says fear the deer, and it's all he's worried about right now. Look, I would be worried too after watching that first game because Toronto probably won 3 of those quarters. And at the end of the game, which we've admitted is the most important part, your team stepped up and kind of took control of it. If I'm Toronto, I'm sitting there saying, let's do it again. If we do this, if we play the same way, if we do everything we're doing right now and it keeps working, we're going to steal one of these games on the road, and all of a sudden we're going to have home court advantage in this. It'll probably go 7 at that point, but we'll have home court advantage. Like I said, I think this has been one of the better series that everyone was ready and willing to write Toronto off as an afterthought. So props to them. And it just goes to show you how important a guy like Kawhi is to any kind of organization, because this team was the same one that realistically went up against LeBron for the past couple years and didn't stand a chance at all. I mean, they won a game or two when LeBron would take it off, but beyond that, they were a non-factor. You bring in a guy like Kawhi, and we're talking about maybe making it to the finals pretty much just by adding one piece.
Yeah. These comments kind of go together, but Nate says if the Raptors can't win when Lowry puts up 30, they're screwed. And Justin says, speak for yourself. Milwaukee stayed and kept it close, shot horribly for the first half from 3, and really the whole game, but made shots when it counts in the fourth quarter, which would, of course...
Well, that's what we were saying. I mean, they came on, and they came alive towards the end of the game, and we don't really have any skin in the game. You're not a Toronto fan. I'm not a Toronto fan. Neither of us particularly like the Bucks. Yeah, exactly. But when I watched that game, I was like, Toronto looks like the team to beat. They look like the better team right now. They're playing better. Like you said, the Deer weren't shooting very well up until the end, and then when it came time to win in the clutch, they turned it on.
I mean, it's just like...
And that's what good teams do.
It's just like about the team that I prefer is that's the Nuggets. They had the last game. They were leading it all the way into the very end of the fourth quarter, and then the Trailblazers took over. Having the lead doesn't mean anything if you can't keep it. And that's a struggle of a team like the Nuggets. And it seems like the struggle of the Raptors right now. It's like if you can't hold on to that lead when you've been dominating, you're going to have a struggle in game 2, 3, 4, and 5.
And I'm with Nate where he said Lowry needs to stay hot. Basically, he's sitting there saying that if Lowry doesn't put up 30 points, they're not going to stand much of a chance. I think Lowry can take a mild step back. If he puts up 20, I think they have a chance of winning this. It doesn't necessarily need to be Lowry, but they need a number 2. They need someone that's going to ride next to Kawhi and actually make an impact on this game. I just don't see it. Honestly, I don't. I don't see them lasting this long if they can, and this stays business as usual. This could be a great series.
Yeah. Justin, it's good seeing you too, man. I'm glad you could make a show. And he says, I never...
like sitting for a week. Hey, rest is important too. It's the rest versus rust argument. Everybody always argues about it, whether it's better to wait, whether it's better to just keep playing.
Yeah.
You just played 82 games. I'm more on the rest side of the equation. And again, that's just me. I'm more on the rest equation because you played 82 games. It's been like, what, an 8-month season? Not to mention you've played an extra month or so worth of playoffs already. I'm okay with waiting a couple extra days while the other team's got to battle it out.
I mean, talk about rest and waiting for a series to start. Look at the NHL series. We'll get to that in a little bit, but talk about a team that's been sitting there waiting to play and not going well on the eastern side of it.
Well, why don't we move on? I think that's a good segue there, Drew. Why don't we talk about the NHL here? Why don't we talk about Boston just beating the ever-living crap out of the Carolina Hurricanes? I didn't say Panthers this time. Beating the crap out of the Hurricanes, man. They mauled them. I mean, they swept Carolina, who swept the Islanders, who swept the Pittsburgh Penguins. Are we going to see a sweep of Boston in the finals to complete the perfect set, Drew?
Yeah, I hope not for the NHL and their fan base. I hope it doesn't happen to them, but it's definitely something for the ages. I mean, if you have not watched hockey, it is worth watching during these playoff series. It's been some of the best series I've seen in a long time, and I'm telling you this as an Avs fan and a Predators fan, and neither of my teams are now in it. These playoffs are huge for the NHL, and if you're thinking about picking up a different sport, watching something different side of the NBA, if you're struggling to see those super teams make it every year, a.k.a. the Warriors.
And that's the thing about hockey. Exactly.
This is a series, playoff series that's just all series. It's just been completely nuts since the very beginning to right now.
And that's the beauty of hockey is you never really know which one of these teams is going to pull it off. We think we know, like going into the playoffs, we're like, oh, Tampa Bay's got this, right? They tied the record for most wins in the season. They're a super team. They score like 4 goals a game, and then what happened? They get swept in the first round by a team like the Blue Jackets, who nobody was talking about going into this. I mean, hockey is the most fungible sport where the puck luck really comes into it. Do you think that was part of it, or do you think Boston just kind of dominated them? I thought Carolina had a little bit of that luck going all the way up to this point in the playoffs, and then I think the better team kind of won. I mean, the luck ran out when they were playing against a superior opponent, and that's why things got so ugly. I mean, Drew, there were 3 of these 4 games where they lost by multiple goals. They weren't really in it. Honestly, except for Game 3 of the series, they didn't look like they were going to stand a chance at all. I mean, their goalie got dominated the first 2. They switched. Didn't help very much. I mean, Game 3 was close. And then Game 4, they lost 4-0. So I look at this. Boston is the better team. And like I said, Carolina just ran out of luck.
Well, I got to give credit where credit's due. I asked a good friend of mine who's been a hockey fan a lot longer than I have his whole life, and I asked him what team is going to surprise everybody, and the one team he did say was the Boston Bruins. He said what they're doing on the ice has been completely dirty and nasty all year long, and they're going to the playoffs with a hot hand, and guess what? They're in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Absolutely. Now let's move on and talk about the other series here, the Sharks, because like CJ said here, the Blues lost Game 3 on a hand pass. Yeah, I think they missed the call too, and we've noticed the Sharks have got 3 or 4 of these calls that have kind of turned games in the playoffs for them. They had a little bit of pushback in the media earlier where their coach came out and said, it's not fair to say this team's been lucky, but I think it is. Honestly, they've had a couple Game 7s decided by pretty questionable calls.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about a hand pass in Game 3, and we tend to forget about these things when a team moves on, but there have been a lot of points in time where the Sharks probably could have been out of the playoffs and just have managed to survive, whether you want to blame the refs or sit there and call it luck.
Yeah.
Things have gone their way.
Well, CJ and Nate are both with us. CJ says NHL was the best thing to watch in playoffs, period. And Nate said that NHL playoffs are always amazing. Guys, I sit there and tell you this because I've not been, I'll admit it. You know, I'm telling you right now, I have not always been a hockey fan. And I've always had my teams. I've always picked my teams and watched them. But this series right now in the playoffs has made me go, I'm missing out. And exactly. I need to watch more hockey.
Exactly. I mean, you have the team of destiny like the Sharks that have had all these guys like Thornton and Pavelski and that have been around and have never won a series or never won a Stanley Cup. And then you've got some other teams. I want to say Super Bowl. I stopped. See,
I'll always
steps
do it.
Every day. We're getting better every day, Drew. And then you've got other teams like the Blues that, honestly, going into this 50 years, they haven't won a Stanley Cup either. So you have a team out of the West that absolutely deserves to win this thing. Yeah. And then you got one of the old bloods like Boston now going to the finals. You had Carolina that nobody picked to go this far. It's unpredictable, especially when you look at it compared to basketball because they go on at the same time. It's refreshing to see that unpredictability where this could finish any way. I mean, really, any one of these teams still stands a chance to win the Stanley Cup. Whereas basketball, we're like, it's going to be Golden State, right?
And then
and some Milwaukee fans are like, we stand a chance, but you got to prove it, right? I mean, this is the team that's been in it for 4 or 5 years now, Drew, and been the favorite for 4 or 5 years, and I'm tired of the consistency. That's why hockey's such a breath of fresh air because there is no consistency.
We say this as NHL fans.
Exactly. Exactly. Let's talk about the series here really quick because I had the Blues in 7 in this one. I said fatigue was going to catch up with the Sharks. Like I said in round 2. Like I said in round 1 here, Drew. Up 2-1. Do I stand to get upset again? It is hockey, so I mean it's a crapshoot. Don't hold it against me.
No, I think the St. Louis Blues are going to go ahead and win Game 4. I think it's going to be a Game 7 series. I think the Boston Bruins are going to sit there and take a time to rest. And so far, the people that are resting has not been the best thing suited for them.
Yes, that's all those teams that got swept.
Yeah, exactly.
Or that did the sweeping.
And then got swept right after. This series is hard to call. And I literally, we were watching this game together, and I literally looked to you and I said, man, the Sharks can win it. And trust me, I'm pulling for the Blues. But I said, this Sharks team, they got something. Everything's going their ways. Calls that are controversy are going their ways.
And they are a good team.
It's crazy.
And they are a good team.
So I don't mean to take anything from them, yeah.
Exactly. So when you're that good and then you get a few of these calls going your way too, magically, things tend to go pretty well for you, right? And I think that's where the Sharks have been. They've managed to pull through in some clutch situations. I still think this goes 7. I think when you look at the way Bennington has kind of revitalized himself, especially in this series, I think he's playing much better than he was the first couple of series of the NHL playoffs. And then you look at the Sharks, the way they're playing, this is going to be a death match. And then I think both of these teams are going to go into Game 7, or go into Game 1, I should say, of the Stanley Cup, completely exhausted because they just had the fight of their life. And then Boston's been waiting for, a week?
And this is a question that I have for all you guys. Do you think that goalies find fatigue later on in the playoffs? I mean, one of the reasons the Blues are where they are is because Jordan Binnington played a heck of a year this year, and you know, I'm not saying he didn't have good games, but this fatigue can come apart. Pecorine, I mean, does fatigue come and take him out? Where he,
Absolutely.
he was one of the best goalies, last year and the year and this year, and when it came to playoffs, he struggled.
Well, and part of that, too, is the Preds, when they get to the playoffs, and we're talking about this again, we're based in Nashville, we see this firsthand. When they get to the playoffs, it's been almost a 50-50 split with his backup, UC Saros, who's very good himself. So when you're giving this guy all this rest of the season and then say, look, man, I need 2 months of straight hockey out of you, of course you're going to see a decline in progress. And I think that's what happened to the Preds. I think, again, they kind of stressed that, well, he's our starter, so he has to play every playoff game here. I think they would have benefited by switching it up a little bit, and we just don't see that in hockey very much. Usually they get to the playoffs and they say, this is our guy, we trust him in net. And again, I think when a guy gets to a certain age, you can sit there and say it's time to switch a little bit, even in the playoffs.
I just want to get back to some of these comments. Nate said, go Sharks. I guess we know who he's pulling for. CJ say, all ones lost. It's crazy.
And that's just hockey.
That is crazy, though.
Usually the team that wins the President's Trophy, I think it's only like 15 or 20% of the time they go on to win the Stanley Cup. And the President's Trophy, if you don't know, is like the best record for the regular season. So usually the team that is the best bombs out in the playoffs and doesn't wind up making it to the Stanley Cup.
Nate also says, puck luck prevails.
Absolutely. I mean, more than anything.
It seems so far. And then CJ says, do I look nervous?
I think so. I'm not sure who you're pulling for, but you should be. It's hockey. You should be nervous.
I'm on camera.
You feeling lucky, punk? But I think you should absolutely be nervous if it's hockey because you never know which way it's going to go.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, Drew. We've talked hockey. We've talked basketball. Let's get back to bread and butter, man.
Let's do it, man.
Let's talk about Darron Lee, traded from the Jets to the Kansas City Chiefs. How do you feel about this move?
Shortly after our show.
About 15 minutes after they fired former GM Mike McCagnon. I forgot his first name. They fire him, and then Adam Gase gets the keys to the Ferrari, and he says, you know what? We don't need the back seat. Goodbye, Darron Lee. Goodbye, former first-round pick. I'm trading you for a 2026-round pick. Kind of a shock. When I see this, man, I look at it, and I sit there and say, you kind of sold a guy. At the beginning, I was like, the Jets made a mistake. They absolutely kind of overjumped themselves. But, in light of recent events, I kind of want to disagree. I want to sit there and say he's going into the final year of his contract.
They did not take his fifth option.
They did not take his fifth-year option as a first-round pick. So he's going to be a free agent next year regardless.
Right.
Is it better to get a sixth-round pick out of him now if you don't think he's going to play with C.J. Mosley and Avery Williamson in front of him?
Well, we talked about it.
Or would you rather wait?
We talked about it. Me and you off the camera and on the camera, he's going to find a hard time finding time in this linebacking core. There's too many inside linebackers, and if that's the position he's going to play, he's going to have a hard time finding it with C.J. Mosley and Williamson. And I know we also talked about this a little bit before the show as well. I think it's misuse. If you look at the first 2 years, as he was coming out of Ohio State going, he didn't say this, but all the experts said he is a coverage linebacker. He's that guy that you want there on third down and long. He's the guy that can cover that tight end or that slot receiver if need be, and he has the speed to keep up with them, and there's no doubt about it. This guy's a very fast linebacker. He's undersized. A lot of people knock him for that, but he didn't do much of that. Even though he was covering, a lot of his plays were pass rush. He got like 4 sacks in 2 seasons. And then finally last year when they're like, hey, we need you to cover some of these people, he had 3 interceptions.
Do you know why they said that?
One for a touchdown, and he had quite a few pass deflects that he did not have the first 2 seasons.
Do you know why they said that? Because they signed Avery Williamson. They're like, this dude can't cover anybody. So, yeah, absolutely. They looked at Darron Lee and said, well, we know he's not covering anybody. We need you to do it. So they kind of utilized him a little bit better. I'm totally with you. If you look at it, year 3 for his contract has been the best of his career. If you use this guy right, if you drop him back into coverage, he 100% can be a good player for anyone's team. And that's why I credit the Chiefs for picking him up. A 6th-round pick is a pretty cheap price for a guy that used to be a first-rounder, especially only 3 years into his career. If I'm Andy Reid or if I'm anyone on the Chiefs organization, I'm sitting there saying, we can use this guy, and if he works out, that's fantastic. If not, he's a free agent anyway. We don't owe him any money after this. And all of a sudden, your linebacking core has some depth, it has some competition, and you have potential to have a high-level starter here.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, he's going to come into as a rotational piece. He is not going to be a starter. I highly doubt he's going to beat Anthony Hitchens out of the starting role, but a guy that can come in there and kind of be that guy that can cover, because everyone knows the third down is the most important down for a linebacker. Well, mostly for all positions, but definitely a linebacker, because that's when you see the guys that can't cover come out and the guys that can cover stay in. And when Anthony Hitchens is sitting there who is a jack of all trades in the linebacking core for the Chiefs, if he's winded, when you get Darron Lee to come in there to cover some of these tight ends or slot receivers, this is a guy that can come in and make a difference.
Absolutely, and for a defense that was absolutely atrocious last year, any kind of piece you can add to it, I'm calling it a plus. Even if the guy doesn't make it through training camp, you've still sat there and got better because you were willing to take a chance. And I'm okay with that. This is a calculated risk and one that, if it pays off, fantastic. You're the better football team. If it doesn't, you didn't spend much, and that's perfectly okay too.
Right.
Let's talk about Patrick Peterson. 6-game suspension. Does Arizona miss their captain, the guy that's been the leader in their secondary for years now? 8-time Pro Bowler, Drew, to get slapped with PEDs. On top of it, I want to ask you, does this hurt the legacy?
No. I don't think it hurts the legacy. Unfortunately, we live in an era where a lot of this stuff just goes on. I mean, look at Julian Edelman. I mean, that's just one name that comes to my mind. As far as him and what he's doing, shortly after this came out, he went to one of his own charities where a lot of people thought he wasn't going to be, and he went out there and he got in front of everyone, and he made no excuses. He said that he made a mistake. He wants to put it underneath him and move forward and take his suspension like a pro should. He is not going to do an appeal, which is great. I think he should appeal if it was 8 games, but they did knock it down to 6. And
usually we see 4 for steroids, so they must have caught him with some pretty bad stuff, is the moral of the story here.
Yeah, but as far as legacy, I don't think it affects it, because let's not forget, he's been the staple point of that defense with a team that is struggling, and they're still... You don't throw the ball that Patrick Peterson is on.
Exactly.
Or ball to the side that Patrick Peterson
Exactly, but I do believe it affects the legacy a little bit because we're going to be talking about this when this guy goes to Canton, and he will. When you go to 8 Pro Bowls, you're going to make it to the Hall of Fame eventually. As soon as he gets in there, we're going to be sitting there putting an asterisk down there at the bottom that says, oh yeah, by the way, he had a 6-game suspension in 2019 for steroids, and we don't know how long he was doing it.
Well, we don't know if it was steroids.
Well, PEDs, performance-enhancing drugs.
I'm not saying this is what it is, but it could also be like Adderall.
It could, but I'm guessing if it was Adderall, you're probably not landing with a 6-game suspension. Like I said, it was probably something pretty bad, and it's probably something that flew under the radar for who knows how long. Drew, when I look at this, I absolutely do believe it affects the legacy just a little bit, and when I look at it, I'm like, I still like Patrick Peterson. He's still a great player. I'd still take him on my team, but it hurts him a little bit. It does. It hurts him in my mind, Drew.
Could you imagine what it would be like back in like the 90s when they
you just juiced up,
when they did severe drug testing back then of what it was. I mean, everyone knew when the drug testing was coming on. They cut it off prior to that, and they would pee clean or the blood would come back clean, and then as soon as it was said and done, they'd get right back on it. It wouldn't make no difference. They wouldn't notice. The only guys that were the ones that got caught were the guys that were overusing it and being ridiculous about it.
Or worse, your baseball and Mark McGwire goes from like 160 pounds to like 225 overnight, and you're
That's
like, oh
natural.
yeah, that's fine. There's pimples
natural.
everywhere.
That's natural.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's talk Shane Ray and Michael Floyd going to the Ravens. I want to talk about this really quick because we were just talking about these guys being top free agents, or at least Shane Ray. We weren't really talking about Michael Floyd being a marquee signing.
No.
When you look at the receivers out there, though, I think he could have probably done worse. Honestly, Michael Floyd, even though he's never got his career jump-started or anything, you're still getting a veteran. You have a lot of young wide receivers now in Baltimore. Do you like signing a veteran presence like this, or is this just a waste of a roster spot?
I don't think it's a waste of a roster spot because we're not at a roster spot yet. I think this is a training camp body. I think this is a preseason body. I highly doubt he's going to make the spot. When you draft two wide receivers in the draft, you know that they're going to make it, and then you still have Snead there. I don't really see it being a waste, but I don't really see him making the final roster.
Absolutely. And now Shane Ray, I do like. I like this guy coming in as a depth guy. In I believe it was 2016, he had 8 sacks and 48 tackles from a guy that was coming in as the 3rd spot. So he's been the rotational guy before. He never really quite made it as a starter. And when you spend a first round pick on a guy like John Elway frequently does and seems to never quite hit on them, you want to see them evolve into that starter for the defense. Right. He never got there, but I think he could be a quality backup. And if you're the Ravens and you're cherry picking a guy that used to be a first round pick that can make an impact on the edge, I know he had a wrist injury a couple years ago. He never really recovered. This is worth the gamble. This is the second wave free agency. You're probably only paying this guy a couple $1 million, 1 or 2 at most. And like I said, you've got the ceiling, you got the upside. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay. Kind of like the Chiefs bringing on Darron Lee at this point. If it doesn't work out, you just cut him and move on.
I think this is a scenario where they stopped and looked at their training camp and looked at their roster and goes, oh God, I think I made a mistake.
Yeah.
And I do think this was a signing based purely on the fact that you need some kind of talent on your defensive line. You lost way too much with Suggs and Smith being gone. I think it is an oh my God moment. I really honestly do. Not that I don't hate this signing. Not that I don't think this guy could be a productive player if he plays 16 games for you. But is he the guy that fixes all your problems? No. You should have been drafting to fix this problem.
Just like we said, the Ravens always seem to find a way to make it work. We're talking about them being in trouble and, they've lost all these pass rushers. And then by the end of the year, we're going to be talking about the Ravens still being a top 5 defense.
will say, there's no way you can lose all this and still be a good defense.
And they will be.
And let's see what happens at Week 8.
All right, let's talk about Jamie Collins next. Essentially, he signed a 1-year deal with the Patriots worth about $3 million when you look at all the incentives and everything. He's gone home. He's not making the $13 million he was getting from Cleveland, but a $3 million contract for a guy like this. Look, you said you would have liked to see him on the Chiefs. I said I would have liked to see him a bunch of other places. To go back to the Patriots, where they got the best football of this, do we see a return to form? Do we see them utilize him the way he was before he left and became the prodigal son?
This is going to be the best thing for Jamie Collins, and this is going to be the best free agent signing all said and done at the end. And I'm saying this through even the trades of Antonio Brown or Le'Veon Bell signing. I think this will be the best trade if they can get anything remotely what Jamie Collins was before he left to go to Cleveland. Or traded to go to Cleveland.
Now, for a landing spot, again, the Patriots have got more out of him than any other team, and the list is short, right? You got Cleveland, who couldn't get anything, and the Patriots, who got everything out of this guy. So I like him going back to the Patriots, but the other thing is they let him go, or they traded him, I should say, because of his attitude. They moved him on because they said he does not fit what we want to do schematically. He's a good player, but when it comes to attitude, we don't want him in our locker room. So I wonder how long of a run he's going to get. Has this time in Cleveland kind of humbled him, or are we going to see him kind of revert to the same tendencies that he has a little bit of success, and then the Patriots are like, yeah, we don't really like exactly where this is going or the way you're acting in the locker room. Maybe that's my biggest concern for him at this point is, are you going to be able to re-gel with an organization like the Patriots? Obviously, they believe so if they're willing to spend a pick on him here.
I do think it's humbling his time in Cleveland. I absolutely think it's going to help them get more out of him, to be honest with you, because that hothead did get to him. There's no doubt about it. Cleveland wasn't what he thought it was going to be. He thought he was going to go over there and dominate and be a better player than he was in New England, and now he's going to finally go back to where, like you said, they got the best out of him. So with that being said, I'll say it again. I think this could possibly be one of the best free agent signings this offseason.
Absolutely. All right, Drew, let's wrap it up with Tyreek Evans. Obviously, he's been, quote-unquote, disqualified, which is the same thing as being suspended. It's just a different term, from the NBA for a violation of their substance abuse policy, and he's going to be out for at least 2 years. Now, the guy's 29 years old. We're talking about a 10-year veteran for the NBA, so he came in really young. Former Rookie of the Year as well. We're not going to see him again until he's 31 here, Drew. Is there any chance he comes back and shows any kind of the, whatever you want to call it, the production that we've seen?
Yeah, no, he will. There's no doubt about it. He'll find a spot somewhere on the roster. Let's not forget, a lot of these teams look at their top starting 5 and go, man, I wish I had depth on my bench.
Right.
And something that Evans can do is add depth in your bench.
And he played well for the Pacers. He did. I mean, he made an impact on the Pacers, so I don't want to sit there and relegate him to the bench, but if you need like an undersized a shooting guard or like an undersized small forward, he could fill that role. There's a lot of teams out there in the NBA, especially towards the bottom end of the NBA, that would love to have this guy on their team, right?
This hurts. This hurts. There's no doubt about it. And I don't really know how this rule affects, but maybe he should find himself in the China League. Maybe he should go play for a year because 2 years sitting and not playing is huge. And he's not going to find time in the D League because that's NBA related, so he's going to have to go out of the United States to go play.
And we're not talking about a huge stat line. I mean, if you look at his averages, he was averaging 10.2 points, 2.9 rebounds, 2.4 assists, about 20 minutes a game, 20 games a minute. That's impressive. 20 games a minute. 20 minutes a game. So we're not getting a guy that's absolutely taking the game over, but you're getting a role player. You're getting a guy who can come in and either be that starter that nobody wants to talk about or admit that he's on the team, or vice versa. Like you said, a good guy coming off the bench. I think he's going to be missed, but it was already an expiring deal for the Pacers. I think they expected him gone to begin with. So
this hurts, though.
This hurts him more than I think it hurts anybody else. I'm not going to say it's over for him, but like you said, 2 years off when you're going into your 30s, that's tough to recover from, man.
It is. He needs to go play somewhere.
Absolutely. Well, all right, man. I think we got some special thanks here. It's been a great show. Obviously, we appreciate all the comments, all the shares, all the likes, guys. We started with basketball this time. We talked football on the back end.
Ended with basketball.
Yeah, well, I had to talk about it. It happened today. We were talking about it. But we've got some special thanks.
Yeah, guys, thanks. Like he said, thank you so much for all the likes and shares. We appreciate it all. Shannon, CJ, Nate, and Justin, you guys are awesome. Thank you for joining us this evening. That's what I got. I my appreciation cannot be portrayed enough on camera and on mic. Guys, I appreciate everything you've done for us. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you.
Absolutely, guys. It was much better of a show because of you. We'll be back on Monday to talk, I'm sure, NFL. We're going to talk about a little bit here in a second because I've got some brainstorming ideas here as to what we're going to talk about. Well, we will be back to talk about plenty of stuff on Monday. We hope to see you there. So for Sports Around the Bar, I am Jake, your bartender. This is Drew, and we will see you guys then.
See ya.